हाँ, मैंने इसीलिए ये किया है ताकि मैं टेस्ट कर लूँ। ओह सॉरी, मैं अभी टेस्ट कर रही थी। हेलो। ओके परफेक्ट। मैं क्या कर दूँ? वो 6:45 पे आएंगे ना, ऐसे ना।
Hi Anam.
बिली, हाय, क्या हाल है?
Listen, you can see that you can access the chats, right? So I will just send you stuff here.
हाँ, ये सही है। हाँ,
Because ये तुम्हारे बिल्कुल सामने होगा. If I send it on the phone, you will have to.
अलग अलग होगा।
Yeah.
ठीक
So
है।
I'll just filter them and send them here. Okay. Okay, cool. I'm gonna disappear when it starts.
फाइक इज सेइंग कि मेरा इंटरनेट स्लो है।
हाँ कर दो. वो ये शुरू में लिख देना starting in less than 30 minutes.
है ना?
नहीं नहीं अभी कर दो. No? Like, okay, maybe 10 minutes before when the other people join. Because once it has started, it's...
Behind the scenes.
Nice, nice. अनम का इंटरनेट ठीक लग रहा है तुम्हें? Anam, tell everyone in your house to...
Let me see यार, मेरे तो यार मेरे घर में कोई इतना तो इस्तेमाल ही नहीं करे। I think it's a matter of the location. मेरा कमरा आप सबसे कोने में।
It's not that bad.
Okay. ठीक है। सना, प्लस का जादू के बारे में मुझे बताती हो कि प्लस का जादू के बारे में क्या बोल सकती हूँ?
Should we... So Anam, we're streaming right now. So let me... Can I call you on WhatsApp? Or I'll just call you?
Oh. Yes, yes, yes.
Hi Hassan, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you so much for joining us. I am just going to quickly introduce myself. I am Sana. You must have got that email from me. Anna, who's just going to join us in a bit, she's going to be moderating the discussion. I know Munira spoke with you a little bit, but unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to speak before. So, just quickly, Anam and I can take you through, like the rough idea of what we're looking at from this discussion. सबसे बड़ी चीज तो ये है कि it's a difficult time and we have to collaborate. So we're just looking to learn from each other.
Right.
And obviously you have a lot of you got a cool
Yeah, I'm
background.
using I'm using a virtual bag.
Anam, can you also unmute and join?
Yes. Hi, Hassan.
Hi, how are you, Anam and Sana?
I'm good.
Lovely to meet you.
Hi, Rabia. Rabia's also joined us. So,
I was thinking which background would be cooler. How about this?
Anam,
I
you
like
should
the
also
one you
take
had
it.
earlier.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that is that.
how do we do that?
See, go to video के साथ एक arrow है, उसको open करें and choose virtual background. So, by the way, I don't know if you guys have received this new warning that came out today. Google has banned Zoom,
Oh wow.
and the US Senate is warning against its use. Supposedly, they're
Why?
saving everybody's data.
Yeah, I did read that.
So we could talk about that also. How schools would sort of understand these IT security requirements that many teachers, principals, admins have no idea, and their students' data could be sold online for God knows what.
Yeah, digital security training for teachers. It's a completely, I think, unexplored thing.
So, Rabia has also joined us.
Hi guys.
Hi, Rabia.
Hi.
How are you?
Hey. Hi everyone.
Hello.
Hi, lovely to have you with us.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So my name is Anam. I'll be moderating the conversation today, and I think we are waiting for two more people to join in, right, Sana?
Yeah, we're waiting for
Yes.
2 more people.
Laraib and Josefa.
Okay.
So maybe we can walk you through the questions. Yeah, मतलब आज की chat में क्या हो रहा होगा? So we've kept about an hour and a half so that we have enough time to talk about कि ये जो school closure है with COVID. Hi Laraib. Hi Laraib, can you hear us? Can you hear me? Laraib.
Anam, maybe you can go through the housekeeping rules and stuff. Who's gonna go
ठीक है.
first?
Okay, great. So हमारा very quickly, I think आप लोग सबकी सना से बात हुई है, तो you have a sense of what our discussion will look like. we'll start with a more general question of कि जो ये सारा change हो रहा है suddenly, how we're adapting to the change. और फिर so it's going to be a discussion that will flow, you know, हमारी जो discussion है उससे questions आएंगे. Some of the questions जो हमने सोचे हुए हैं जो structure करने के लिए उसमें जब हमने थोड़ा generally बात कर ली, so then we'd like to talk about the problems that you faced in implementation. Specifically like you know हम अक्सर सुनते हैं कि ओके टीवी पे कंटेंट ले आएं या डिजिटल लर्निंग कर लें, बट वो कैसे करें, उसके अंदर क्या क्या प्रॉब्लम्स आते हैं. In different kinds of contexts हमारे पास different तरह के प्रॉब्लम्स होंगे, सो यू नो टॉकिंग अबाउट दैट. और फिर हम थोड़ा सा सॉल्यूशंस की तरफ आके यू नो जब हम बात करते हैं डिजिटल होना चाहिए, you know talking about different aspects of the solutions and क्या हम creatively कर सकते हैं. बहुत सारे बच्चे हमारे पास ऐसे हैं जिनके पास access to mobiles, access to smartphones भी problem होता है, तो हम उनके साथ क्या कर रहे हैं. And then talk about students' ka well-being. So my pass, you know, Rabiah, you're here. Huzaifa has done some work, and all of you, I'm sure, कोई ना कोई आपका experience रहा है with the student well-being, mental health के ऊपर. तो इस situation में हम बच्चों की restoration के लिए उनको एक creative outlet देने के लिए हम क्या करें, हम क्या कर सकते. So we'll talk about that. And फिर इसके बाद, you know, as the discussion flows in, approximately every half an hour we look at, so I'll be looking at कि क्या questions आ रहे हैं हमारे पास from the audience, and I'll be sharing them with you people, so then you know whoever wants to answer. One thing in terms of housekeeping rules that I wanted to discuss was कि when I ask a question, how do we go about answering them? Like you know जब हम physically होते हैं, it's easier to know कि कौन पहले बोल रहा है. यहाँ पे how would you people like to go about it?
Sorry, was there a question?
Yes, I said that. How would you like to? So when I ask a question that is open to all of you, how would you like to go about it in answering? Like, how will you know कि अच्छा पहले कौन बोल रहा है, फिर कौन बोल रहा है? How do you want to go about that?
Maybe we can post on the chat.
Yeah, I think you can start with one person. And so, for instance, you can say, okay, it's a question for everybody, but Rabia, can you start? Rabia, I'm sorry, can you start? Or
Right.
there are two Rabias. One is Rabia, the other one is Rabia. Is that right?
I'm Rabia.
You're Rabia. And the one, you're
I'm
Rabia.
Rabiah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rabia.
Rabia
That's so I see I'm the token guy from the opposite gender.
There's one more.
Okay, so the first one.
Guys, can everyone speak up a little louder? Our comms guys saying कि आवाज नहीं आ रही है YouTube के उस पे, so
Oh.
Okay.
What's the YouTube channel?
it's YouTube, but don't open it right now because then there'll be like echo and stuff.
Right. I know. लेकिन मैं mute कर दूँ.
But to share with your friends, it's youtube.com/Zindagi Trust FTP. I can put this here. मैं यहाँ पे लिख देती हूँ.
Guys, can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Yeah.
Okay,
hear you.
great.
Hi.
Okay, so I'll start with one person, and then would you people like कि मैं ही कहती रहूँ कि अब आप बोलें अब, or would you people like to kind of do that yourself?
Yeah, I think that sounds fine. And then, like, I guess perhaps we can, like, you know, raise our hand this way just to indicate if we have something to. Yeah,
that would work. All right. Okay.
Anam, Huzaifa is going to join by 7. He's praying right now. So I think you guys can start. I'm going to disappear from the video, but I'll be commenting on the comments part.
So like we start?
No, start by 7.
Okay. So I'm wondering if you people would like to introduce each other. I have heard a lot about all of you from Sana. So Hassan, आप लोग जो सबक का content बनाते हैं वो बहुत ही मज़ेदार होता है, and I think all of us want to know कि what all goes behind content creation, and I hope कि in the once we start, so please do talk about it, because I think content curation, content development, digitizing content, it's become a need for everyone, for all of us. So it would be really cool to learn from your experience, and then आप लोग ने implement भी किया है different schools में, different जगहों पे, और different तरह की areas में. So again, it would be interesting to see कि वहाँ पे आप लोग की क्या learnings थी and उसे हम क्या सीखते हैं. Rabia, I think for you, I would be really interested in the well-being, generally what your organization, your school is doing, and then specifically, in terms of mental health and well-being, बहुत सारी चीजें हैं, because ये एक बहुत unusual सी situation है, जहाँ पे
Right.
हमारे पास, बच्चे, they're home, they're supposed to be their summer vacation, but it's
Yeah.
nothing like a vacation. So
Exactly. Okay. So you mean like talking about mental well-being in the current situation, or just generally also wanting to speak
Yes.
about what else we do in school?
It generally also, but more about in the current situation, and हम किस तरह से ensure कर सकते हैं well-being बच्चों का इसमें.
Yeah.
Laraib, आपका भी I know कि काफी strong experience है with the digital learning जो आप लोग कर रहे हैं Headstart में, and I think it would be really nice to see it. And I visited Headstart some time back, and so I know कि you people have been working a lot on digitizing content, but अब जहाँ पे एक in-person role बिल्कुल ही खत्म हो गया है, so what does it look like now? And Rabia, for you, I think it would be really nice if you can talk about your experience as a Teacher Pakistan Fellow, and also experience of your cohort, and because all of you collectively, ये आपका आखिरी महीना तो महीना था with your students, and I know कि वो कितना precious time होता है बच्चों के साथ, and
So-
not having the time, and kind of thinking productively
I'm
about
in
it, and
the-
thinking creatively.
Yeah. So I'm in the first year of the fellowship, so I have another year with my students.
Okay,
So
okay.
this is
You
the
have
first year
another year with the fellowship. Yeah. Okay, that's great. And a lot of your co-fellows don't have another year. So
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll try
if you would like to, also talk about their experience. And I know that this all the interesting creative stuff you people have been doing to reach out to your students, जहाँ पे cell phones and internet etc. की काफी ज़्यादा problem होता है. So I think we'll have an interesting discussion. And then as the questions keep on coming up, is there anything that you people would like me to highlight, or would you like me to ask or talk about specifically?
I think
Nothing from my end.
goes,
Ji, Hassan.
and hopefully we have some questions from the audience also. They sometimes leave comments, and that could also help us understand which direction they want the conversation to go to.
Can we also talk about teacher training?
Laraib, आपकी
Hello, can you hear me?
आवाज नहीं आ रही है.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So can we also talk about teacher training? Because as a school in a managerial position, I see my teachers and a lot of teachers around me struggling to keep up with the curriculum, and making it interactive, making it nice and fun, so that the students do not get bored and do not feel like it's not being productive anymore. So we should talk about the teacher aspect of online learning as well.
Absolutely. That's very important.
I think one thing. Sorry.
No, please go ahead, Rabiah.
I think in terms of mental well-being, one thing that we can perhaps talk about is how we can work with parents at this time, because the students are essentially at home, so they are with their parents the whole day. So that's actually a very important aspect of mental health. So I think maintaining that communication with parents. I can also talk about it, when you ask what schools can do during this time of crisis. or
And I think for our communities, because was so thodi low income communities, and it's very difficult to access them. So there's this thoda sa ek mindset hota hai ki is there even a need to do it? So we can talk about why that's important. कि उन बच्चों को भी reach out किया जाए, and this is not in fact summer vacation. So even if it's difficult to reach out, we should.
और यहाँ पे ये भी चीज़ है ना कि अभी एक बहुत बड़ा कंसर्न ये है कि इस किस्म के जब गैप्स आते हैं तो आपका लर्निंग गैप बहुत ज़्यादा बढ़ जाता है बिटवीन स्टूडेंट्स और बाहर बहुत सारे स्टूडेंट्स बिकम एट रिस्क ऑफ ड्रॉपिंग आउट सो एंड बिकॉज वी हैव like you and Josefa are working with different kinds of schools versus Rebbia and Laraib. So we also have a mix where we're working with different groups, and different groups has had different opportunities and different challenges out there. So I think it's good to talk about all of those.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So hello, welcome Josefa.
Hello, hi. Thanks for having me here. Am I audible enough for everyone?
Yes, yes.
Okay, brilliant. Brilliant.
All right. So it's 7 o'clock and we're going to start now. So thank you so much for joining, all of you. We have with us today Laraib Imdad from Headstart School campus, Josefa from he's a co-founder of Young Patriot School. Hassan, CEO and co-founder of Sabaq. Hassan, thank you so much for joining. We have Rabiah Chaudhary, who's a teaching fellow at Teach for Pakistan. And then we have Rebbia from Haque Academy. She's a counselor at Haque Academy. So thank you so much. हमारा आज का जो topic है वो है the changing role of schools in this post-corona world. हम लोग सब अभी एक बहुत ही यूनिक सिचुएशन में हैं बिकॉज it's something जो कि all of a sudden the entire world is in a very confused state. The entire businesses are shut down, our schools are closed down, and we don't know for how long this will continue. And इसमें बहुत सारे हमारे aspects हैं to talk. There's an aspect with families, with the students, the teachers, the management. We can talk about the well-being of students in this time. The role of schools, as we've seen in the past, it's completely evolving now. And जो हमारे students की needs हैं, it's very important to talk about कि is context में now what are the needs of our students and how we need to evolve as individuals and as organizations to meet those needs. So thank you once again everyone for joining us. So मेरा पहला सवाल है from all the panelists. If you can talk about how you and your organizations are adapting to this change and to this new world. Maybe Hassan, if you could start the conversation for us.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot for inviting us and taking sort of the content producer's story. So interestingly, my organization, we are about a team of 25 to 30 people. And I think on the 21st or the 20th, the Monday, the week in which the lockdown happened, just a few days before that, we all decided as a team that we would start doing work from home. And most of our team members are engineers, software developers, content producers, animation folks, and curriculum designers. So they all could work from a laptop. And when we started working, right away, we realized how much we didn't need to be in the same room. So work from home has worked out fairly well for us. And we very actively have a daily huddle of all the supervisors at 10:30 in the morning, in which we all share with each other what each of the team will be working on. And immediately, as we continued with our ongoing product plans, we also started to modifying and adapting our products so that it could be utilized by parents at home. We made our award-winning learning app Muse free for all parents and all schools during the coronavirus shutdown. And that has increased the usage on our platform. Another thing we did is we collaborated with the Federal Department of Education, where we offered all of our learning videos and content for free to the government to be used during the coronavirus shutdown. And now on the 10th, I think, or the 12th of April, they will be launching a dedicated 12-hour transmission on one of the PTV channels, in which for kindergarten to grade 5 level time slots, they will be using a lot of our content and content from a couple of other partners. And now we're talking to the Sindh government. Hopefully something could come out over the next couple of days. And Punjab government is also in conversation with us. They released and launched Talim Ghar, in which they are running educational content on cable TV channels all across the Punjab districts. So they want also to include some of our content from kindergarten to grade 5.
Thank you so much, Hassan. Laraib, if you could talk about your experience with regard to COVID and how your organization is adapted to it.
Assalamualaikum. Thank you for having me. Thank you for taking this initiative. It was really important that it was high time that someone actually talked about these things because the world that we knew 3 weeks ago is completely different to what we have now. Coming from a school background, working with a bunch of teachers, students, I have realized in these 3 weeks that I think the world has changed forever. We will never be working in the same way again. Our students will not be learning in the same way again. It is a complete 180-degree shift. So when this happened, actually, I think none of us had anticipated it. None of us saw it coming. But when it was on us suddenly, we had a lot of challenges. We had to shift everything to a digital format, and B, we had to constantly keep in mind because we work with Cambridge, we work with the IB, and they are the external boards. So we have a set of deliverables that we have to submit to them. We have a certain course content that we have to cover. And the time that this happened was the time when the students are having their internal exams so that they can prepare for their externals, which happen somewhere in May and June. The biggest challenge was how do we conduct exams online because ये कभी भी नहीं हुआ था कि हम exams online कर रहे हैं. We had to train our teachers very, very quickly. Again, the training also happened online. We used a lot of open source tools जो कि free available थे. हमने उनको incorporate किया like Google Classrooms. So we made sure that in a matter of few hours, we shifted all our students, all our content onto Google Classroom. And then gradually, by taking baby steps, पहले हमने कोई video incorporate नहीं की, कोई audio incorporate नहीं की. We just put up the exam papers, the course content that was to be covered. We put it up online, and we started making sure that students start doing it. We could see that students were struggling. We could see that even teachers were struggling. But within a few days, things started looking better. So we got the exams conducted online, and then we gradually moved on to having audio and video lectures using again the Gmail, the Google open source tools available to us. So in these 2-3 weeks, we've realized that we can do pretty much everything that we were doing before. We were just together in one building. Now we're not. We're not in a classroom setting anymore, but we're pretty much doing everything that we were before this.
Thank you so much, Laraib, for sharing this. Rebbia, if you could move next and talk about your experience as a counselor at Haque Academy.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this talk. And just, forgive me for repeating what everybody else said, but really it's, I'm glad that you guys took the initiative to hold this discussion. It's an extremely important one. And I really do think that it's going to change things quite a bit for schools and how they operate, and just how learning will take place, student behavior, student performance, I think the months to come. And I think, interestingly, and I will speak about this more later, I think that the current situation that we're in actually says quite a lot about the world that we were in before coronavirus. So thank you. I'll first give you a general overview of how my school coped with, the present health crisis. So if you remember, schools were closed back in, I think, end of February. When the first few cases came up in Karachi and in Sindh. And I remember that at that point, the Sindh government first said that, we will close schools for a couple of days. And then it got closed for 2 weeks. And then some time passed, more cases came up, and then it got, schools got closed till the end of May. So what actually worked out for us in our favor, and we're lucky, I guess, that we were already in the process of implementing an online learning system. We previously only used to have it for our O-level students, but our school was already planning to have an online learning system in place for from grade 1 all through O-levels. And so we were already in the process of that. And as soon as this outbreak took place, we kind of expedited that process. And then initially we moved everything to Google Classroom. And then once the system was in place and teachers were trained, so we kind of shifted everything to that system. But yes, in the beginning, we were in a state of flux like everybody else. There was a lot of uncertainty. And we also have to train teachers about this new learning system that we're putting in place. So that was, quite a challenge and quite a lot of work. From a mental health perspective, basically what we did was that we made sure that we maintained our communication, and I think that's extremely important in any time of like any crisis situation, and especially the one that we are in right now. I think it's very important to acknowledge what's happening, acknowledge the fact that yes, there is uncertainty, and that yes, there is a shift taking place, and so we kind of made sure that we maintain that communication, not just with students but also with parents. And because we moved to Google Classrooms and the online learning system that we had, so we also made sure that teachers were regularly checking in with all students. Something as simple as just asking them how they've been doing, how things are like for them since this since the lockdown took place. And apart from that, on my end, I made sure that that the sessions that I already had that were going on with students, those continued. So those were some of the things that we were putting into place. But that's not all. I mean, like you mentioned before, that this is supposed to be summer vacation, but it not really is. It's not really. And I, frankly, I can't imagine what these students must be feeling, because summer vacations is supposed to be a time when you relax, when you travel, when you just like, I guess, do things at your own pace. And now they're expected to come back in June and pretend that all of a sudden like nothing took place, and back into like your regular classroom. So quite a lot of, I would say, cognitive dissonance that's taking place probably in their minds. But I think right now is the time to kind of step up and still provide mental health support to students despite the fact that we are in summer vacation, because I think that this is a very unusual kind of summer vacation. So we are still working on that, trying to prepare a packet for parents and students, some resources and tools, and still working around, I would say, how we can continue to provide mental health support, not just for students who were, say, coming to me, before this situation, but also students who are now feeling anxious, and who are now, have developed these fears due to coronavirus. So yeah, I would say still in the process of like, working things out.
Thank you, Rabiah. I think all of us are in the process of working things out, because it is a situation that has kind of come up really suddenly, and we're trying to go with the best solution in this time that we can, and at the same time working on other solutions. Josefa, I would like to invite you now to talk about some of your work and your organization that you're doing in this time and how you're adapting to this change.
Yeah. Thank you, Anam, and thanks for having me here. and really, it's sort of an honor to be part of a panel which has such like brilliant individuals. So for me, just to give everyone a quick background, the Young Patriot School uh, is a small setup that I co-founded with a few other individuals back in 2013, and we work in Neelam Colony in Karachi. And when I say small setup, we sort of created that, and the idea was to stay small, and we work with pre-primary grades, and we sort of build a foundation in the community through that, and then try to sort of look for placements otherwise. So that's just the model that we follow. So for us, it was like everyone said, it was very sudden, and this sort of news and this situation sort of dawned on us, and for us, then we felt like it was the best decision to sort of given off and sort of announce the holidays and sort of go into vacation mode, because for us, one thing that was really important for us to consider was that uh, we had children from the age of 3 to 4, 4.5, and with such young children, the immunity is already very low, so there's that health risk additional. And secondly, there was a lot of anxiety building up among the parents as well. A lot of them wanted to sort of go back to their villages and sort of figure out things, and so that was like an immediate response. And the other side of it, that we're now focusing more on is from us as a team. I think it's provided us a brilliant opportunity to sort of pause and reflect on the practices that we had been following prior, and the practices we want to develop using this time, so that I don't know, whenever school reopens, or if it does reopen, or whatever we're in, that we're prepared for that. And that's the sort of phase we're currently in. We're also currently looking to sort of study the whole dynamic that's going on right now, with like surveys within our within the parents, within the families that we cater to, and trying to find out what internet connectivities do they have, what sort of platforms are they using, if they are using, if there's WhatsApp, if that's like the most available application that can be used. What are the immediate sort of needs that they have right now emotionally? Otherwise, how are they doing? Because for us, it's also sensitive, because with a community such as Elam Colony, there's a lot of one, the financial bit is there, so financially the families aren't very well off, and then there's a lot of other emotional and a lot of like there's fear, and there's general like uncertainty, and there's general grief that's part of their daily lives, and now it's just risen to a different level. So we have to sort of work around that sensitivity also, and try to gauge what the feeling is, and then sort of develop a response around that. But what I'm grateful for is that we have this time to sort of figure it out, and then respond accordingly. So that's the situation that we're in. So we're it's unsettling, but at the same time it's an opportunity that is proving to be meaningful, because like I said, as a team, we're now getting the chance to sort of reflect and really think about choices, and think about practices, and think about the ways forward, and that I feel is a very meaningful exercise.
Thank you so much for sharing, Josefa, and having because we're also working with low-income communities. I understand like how sensitive it is, and like how every little thing that we do, has to be really thought out. I would like to now invite Rabiah Chaudhary to share about your experience as a teacher Pakistan fellow. You're teaching at a school in Barakahu, which is at the outskirts of Islamabad, and please share some of the interesting things that you and your co-fellows at Teacher Pakistan have been doing.
So, hello everyone. First of all, thank you for having me. And like everyone has already pointed out, it's so amazing to be here listening to everyone. So, just a bit of background about Teach for Pakistan. So, our model is that we have fellows like me. So, there's a 2018 cohort and a 2019 cohort that's still working. So the fellows are placed in different schools in different communities outside of Islamabad. So for example, I'm in Barakahu, I'm near Barima. So these communities, as I've also pointed out, the set of challenges is very different. So the moment ye sara kuch hua, I think it was 15th of March when schools were closed. It was announced that schools were closed. So at that moment, we sort of felt that inaction was not an option for us, considering that our students they're already at a greater risk of dropping out, because if they're losing the presence of this school, they're going to move back to their villages. They have so many other challenges, financial challenges, and as the importance of learning might sort of drop out of their lives. And so we wanted to maintain contact with our students and to give them this assurity that we will be there for them. And also our place and in that school, that gives us this vantage point, that we have this access and this connection with students that will help us understand their needs in this time in a multidimensional way. So we felt that it was a responsibility to reach out to them and to find out what it was that they needed before we could sort of decide what our strategy would be. So during the first week, we were reaching out to our kids, and we were sort of identifying our own constraints in reaching out, getting their numbers, and then how do we make it work, and all of that. And then around 20th of March, we started sitting down as an organization and deciding what our next steps would be. So in that, we felt that we needed to collect, first of all, the data collection. So we started, first of all, collecting data on just expanding more on what their needs were. Then also how we could access them, whether they had a phone, if they had a phone, what kind of phone it was. And then also if they had a TV. So like as Hassan also pointed out, FDs has this channel which is going to be giving content. So if they had a TV, they could access that. If they had a computer, there was some sort of access, radio. Then if they had internet, whether or not they had internet, and if they had internet, what bandwidth and what could be sent to them. So we started gathering all of this data. Then we also started asking them about their households, like how many people are living in that household, who is our student talking to on a daily basis, and then who in that household has enough literacy or is at a position that they can help us, because we never do this work alone. We always have the household involved in everything. So we identified who could help us. We also identified what our students' routines were and what their household routines were. So we felt that, so the needs that we identified, first of all, there was this need of ration, which we felt like, okay, so that becomes an important need. So then we started connecting people in need of ration to people who were providing ration. For some communities, we fundraised ourselves, and we had ration drives for those communities. So but we felt that our vantage point helped us realize that the need was not just physiological, and it wasn't just relief that they needed in terms of finance and health. Our kids were going through this really tough time in which they had lost the safety of that school. Our classes had sort of become a safe space for them. They no longer had that space where they could focus on themselves and be away from the troubles that were outside of school. So it was important for them. They were feeling this loss of space. Then they had lost all of the connection that they had with their teachers and with other students. They had lost that. And then with that, they had lost all structure and routine. And they were in this place of uncertainty where they didn't know what was going to happen. And they were worried about everything that was to come, even in terms of education. So with all of that in mind, with all the data we had collected, we then started to make a plan on how to create content and how to deliver it. So then our content was also informed by the needs of the students at that time. We focused on two things. We focused on their well-being, so they could focus on their emotional learning, like how can we help them understand what's going on and process it, how can we keep them physically active, how can we keep them connected. So some of our content is about that. Then there is content about the academic content, and that is also tailored to what is happening right now, to help them understand what's happening right now. We want to keep them exposed to the English language, but we're introducing them to words that will help them understand the news and everything that's being going on in English around them. So giving them that literacy with subjects like science and social studies, they give them the tools to actually understand things that are happening. For example, I teach social studies and I teach them about citizenship. So as a citizen, what is your civic duty right now? or if I'm teaching them about economics, how do you relate that to what's happening right now, or just even means of communication. So all of that, then the content was created, and then so delivery then becomes the biggest challenge. And in that, we had a lot of help from the families themselves. So for example, I reached out to students and I would ask them, okay, yeah, we're planning this distance learning curriculum, how can we access you? And even so, you would be surprised by families who had lost their jobs, did not have food, and they would tell me कि मैम अगर एजुकेशन की बात है, मेरी बच्ची की तालीम की बात है, तो मैं फोन ले लेता हूँ. So they were prepared to make so many sacrifices for their children. I had families. So there's one fellow who has a father who had identified an office जिसका Wi-Fi बाहर आता है. So every Monday when content is sent, he goes there, he downloads that content, and he comes back. So there's so much that the parents helped us with. There's so much that they prepared to do. They identified कि मेरी खाला के पास phone है, I can go there, or so in that way we were able to connect to so many students who we didn't have numbers for. We had an announcement in a masjid, और उस ऐलान से हमने कहा कि everyone contact your teachers. So they contacted us. When we were doing ration drives through word of mouth, or when children started getting content, they started contacting us. So as we went along, things sort of got easier and they started figuring themselves out. And then, so when it comes to delivering content, then, so we have some students who have WhatsApp and some students who we can just reach through text. So what we do is that our content then is made, we have audio notes, we have PDFs, we have text messages and all of that. So that will be delivered to people who have WhatsApp. For people who don't have WhatsApp, they get some content over SMS. And then we have identified focal people within the communities, and we can make learning packets and give them to the focal person, and students can collect them at a certain time. So then that keeps those without WhatsApp engaged. And then also we have this buddy system where we pair up students with WhatsApp with people who don't have students who don't have WhatsApp, and then we can enable them with phone credit. We've also been looking into that, and then those students can take care of those who do not have access. So basically, we're just going along and figuring things out as they are. A lot of it is still, we're still learning as an organization because this is all new for us. But what we feel like is that there is an urgency for us to act right now, because our students need to know that they haven't lost the connection that they have with us. And we feel that while the challenges might look different, the battle that we are fighting is still against inequity, and we can't let our students lag behind while their privileged counterparts can move on through different ways. And also that for our students' mental health, their well-being, it is very, very important that they have some contact, because other than me reaching out, my student will not be talking to anyone the entire day. They have no contact with the outer world. So it's very important for them to have that connection with us and to have that space. So for that, we're sort of going along and learning and creating. Thank you.
Rabia, thank you so much for sharing. And I loved when you said that, inaction is not an option. And that's so true. Whether we are jumping right into action or we're pausing and reflecting, there is something that we're doing, and it's so important. Everything that you people have shared, I can see that the journey has been challenging for all of us. And at the same time, there is so much hope and inspiration in this. I could relate to a lot of the things that you people were saying. Josefa and Rabia, you were talking about connecting with the students. For us as an organization, also we realized that digitizing the content and digitizing student data, etc., was always something important and something that we wanted to do. But like this situation kind of put it into an urgent. It became really, really urgent. So we started reaching out to students. Some of you talked about having constant contact with the student. That is so important. So again, we designed a survey. Jahan pe we were looking at the needs of the students and their families, if they're safe, if they're well nourished, if they have basic facilities, TV, radio, like you said, internet, phone. So everything from the student well-being to actually delivering learning content. How do we make that happen? we're in the process of collecting that data. We're looking at, okay, which of our students use WhatsApp, which of our students use Facebook, what are the mediums that our students are already using, and engaging them through these mediums. And even what I heard from Laraib and Rabiah, I suppose that even like the reason of using Google Classrooms is because, that one reason also is that this is something that they're already familiar with, like Google and tools. So it's we understand that it's important to kind of reach out to students and uh, do things that they're already familiar with. हम जब बात करते हैं बच्चों के लिए कंटेंट डिलीवर करने की एंड कंटेंट क्रिएट करने की, so one thing that we did was that there was a story that we had worked on called Plus the Jadoo. So we kind of sprang right in action, animated it, had a voiceover narrated by Shahzad. And again, this, like, if we had time, I wouldn't say that this was the best thing that we would have produced if we had more time. But again, we felt like waiting for the right product right now was not as important as having something that could connect with our students and connect to students at large. And we're now looking at how we can develop our content, the content that we already have, digitizing it to make sure that if the school closure continues, if it extends, we can we have students, we have a way to reach out to students and connect with them. I think it's also very important when we're thinking about connecting with our students and meeting their needs and the needs of the families, to look at when we look at well-being. And for example, Rabia, you talked about summer vacation. So one thing that we did was that we had some artists collaborate with us, and they developed these fun activities, fun worksheets, coloring sheets that the students can do and they can enjoy in this time. So I think it's important to, and all of us can think about, and I'm sure we're thinking about how we can keep our students engaged in this time. uh, this entire process for us has been full of challenges, and there's so many, like, as and like you said, as we go into it, we realize that, okay, what more needs to happen and what are the problems we're facing. And I would like to ask all of you, to talk about some of the problems that you have faced in implementing the solutions that you talked about. So maybe Rabia, we could start with you.
Sure. Um, some of the problems that I faced was, I think, I would say, like, a lack of resources, perhaps, because I mean, I'm the only school psychologist currently working at working in my school. So I had to think about how many, like, students can I possibly reach out to, and we do have, our student strength is about, I would say, a little over 1,000 students. So what is the best way to check in with each of them? And I think what worked best was really getting teacher support at this moment, and because they were the ones who were interacting with students every day through the online learning system that we have. So there were students who I knew were having, who were going through difficult time even before this whole thing took place. And those students had already identified, that I knew that, okay, these would require a regular check-in, say, from my end. But then there are students who might not be particularly anxious or stressed, but are still experiencing, I think, that baseline level of stress that all of us are experiencing, given the situation. And so that's where teachers kind of stepped in. The other issue that came up was, I would say, like, student confidentiality, because obviously, previously I was having sessions in person, so they would come into my room, and the whole thing would be private and confidential. So how do you do that online? How do I make sure that there's no one in the background, or that nobody's reading the students' emails, and how can I kind of ensure that confidentiality? And I think that, honestly, for that, what works best is, so there are a couple of things. For older students, it worked out well, because and I would say these are students who are in grade 8 or and above, so grade 8 or O levels. They do kind of have their privacy. By this time they definitely own a smartphone, and they have their own I think the parents also respect privacy at this age. So it worked out well for them. But for students who are younger, it was better for me to communicate with parents instead, and ask them how things are going, and what challenges are they facing. The other thing was also that I would say that even if you say that there's a counselor who's having a session either on the phone, or a Skype session with a student, and they kind of suspect that there might be somebody in the background. Well, I think that what you should do is definitely still maintain contact. I think that maintaining contact is absolutely essential. And so what you can do in that moment is perhaps not put the student in spot and like ask them to ask them particularly about something that's private, but still ask them how their day is going, what they need help with, giving them tips and tools on how they can cope with their daily stress. So those were some of the challenges, I would say, like just the logistical issues that would WhatsApp work, would email work better, should it be a phone call, how regularly do we check in with students, who should be doing the check-in, because again like it's a school of 1,000 students, so how do you cover each student? But what I would recommend is that really there are a lot of ways to overcome and to work around these logistical issues. I mean, I know schools abroad though who have literally called up every single family and every single parent and asked them how they've been doing. And honestly, I feel like if you have the resources to do that, why not? If you can't check in like through Skype or phone call, you can send out a mass email and just acknowledging that yes, we're going through this time and we hope you're doing well. You can also make a packet, or a packet consisting of tools and resources on how you can cope up with stress and anxiety during this time, and send it out to your students. So there are a lot of ways to overcome the challenges that one would naturally experience during this time.
Thank you for sharing that, Rabiah. And as an organization, we're right now in a place where just this week our counselor has started reaching out to students. So everything that you shared would be very helpful for us, and I'm sure like for all of us who are watching and listening also. Because Rabiah talked about older students and younger students and how the needs are different. I'm wondering, Huzaifa, if you would like to talk about the challenges that you face, because you're dealing with a particularly younger group, जिनके साथ it seems like it's easier to kind of work in person, or like they need more human interaction. So how how are you looking at it, and what are the challenges that you have faced so far? Huzaifa, are you with us?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just give me a second. I don't know. There's something that's up with this, and I can't seem to figure out where the video has gone all of a sudden.
No problem. Would you like us to come back to you,
Yeah.
Huzaifa?
Okay, got it.
Here.
Figured it out. Sorry. Yeah. It's just I'm doing this for the first time on my phone. I normally do the Zoom thing with my laptop, so now this phone configuration is weird. Anyways, so yeah, your question about challenges. So I feel like with the younger lot, it's tricky because a lot of our curriculum normally was based on very active learning, and there was sort of like would normally take place. Now we're still in the process of thinking and sort of reflecting and trying to come up with ways how that can be transferred, and also figuring out ways to do that. So I feel like that's where a challenge comes in with elder with sort of elder age groups. They have their own challenges, but I feel like it still might be easier to sort of have that understanding and have those tools in place, because instructions and all that can be more. There's more understanding. There's more sort of the cognitive maturity there in place. With the age group that we're working with, what we're now realizing is that we're depending a lot on the parents now. So the parental involvement element has gone up by like 200%. And the challenge there and the sensitivity there is that with a lot of them, the families already, the family dynamics are difficult, and it's a one room sort of a house where there's like two families living together, and within that setup, now that the parents are also home, there's all these risks that are there in terms of the family dynamics sort of going haywire, and there's that element, like in a few of our places there was already sort of this risk of sort of violence and abuse in households, and now that has gone up a lot. So 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 we're trying to find a way to sort of establish that connection and try to find, okay, maybe identify a few one person in that household who we could connect with and sort of seek at least get an idea first of what's happening with the child currently, and also then trying to pass on instructions as to and tutorials and sort of support as to how to sort of keep that learning going, because it's also important for us to understand right now uh, is that like learning is not looking the same, and it probably won't look the same for a while, and and it's really like a big question for, I think, all of us to also seek what are we really going towards, and what is learning really, what does it mean for us at this time, because for us it's like the we're trying to see, and we're still trying to figure this out, but for now what we've come to understand is that uh, as long as the child is able to sort of interact with the environment that they're in positively and sort of understand the lived experiences that they're going through, that in itself is learning. And right now, especially because of the dynamic in the households and the family that we're working with, what our aim is to sort of support the families in understanding that aspect and just creating environments that could be safe enough for the child to explore and the child to go on its own, because we're already like we already, our school times are there's a lot of play and there's a lot of exploration, there's a lot of that. This classroom time is not really there, like it's not like a classroom, you're sitting and you're listening and sort of a thing, and that play element can come, the brilliance is that play element can come at home as well. The only challenge is that sort of how to communicate that sufficiently to the parents at a time when they're completely stressed out and they're sort of their own schedules and their own dynamics and their own sort of environments are so uh, you know overwhelming, and that's a reality, like that's something that we have to respect and appreciate, that that's there. So so that's where we're at, and that's interesting. It's sort of an interesting mix of challenges, uh, and like but I would like to agree, like what Laraib said, like connection is key, and I think that's what we're also trying to build. And with that connection, I think that can really be the first step towards finding out like maybe a more sustainable solution. But like I said, with that younger age group, there's a lot of that connection depends on the parents and our interaction with the parents, and that is sensitive right now.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Zefa. Thank you so much for sharing this.
And then literally every topic we talked about, instead of citizenship, we study about diversity and about rights and responsibilities. So I want to explain to them how social distancing is so important, because it's a civic responsibility to take care of others and to think about others. And then I want to tell them about they have the right to health right now, or they have the right to education, and the government is supposed to provide it. We study about the government, we study about legislative, executive. So just to give them the terms, give them that knowledge so they can understand all of the news that's going around them. So that can be for social studies. For science, it's about disease and it's about viruses and health. That's all such a big part of what they study in class. Even for English, so for example, if we're giving them words for vocabulary, so one of the fellows, she's giving them words like spread, or words like humanity, social distancing, and just things that they're hearing right now, just to help them understand what's going on, because we don't want our children to feel overwhelmed by everything. We want them to navigate through this and to come out of this with increased knowledge and the sense of how we were able to do so much in a time where we were so limited. So that resilience is what I want them to take away from this, instead of feeling isolated or abandoned. So that's how we're shaping our content.
Thank you so much for sharing, Rabia. Resilience in this time is so important. Again, for all our children. And Hassan, I would like you to now talk about some of your challenges because your organization is one that has been working on, digital content, and yet, like when you started, you talked about that you people have also had to go through changes. And if you could talk about that and the challenges that you faced in the process.
All right. So, see, our product over the last 4 years has been primarily designed for schools. And the way we have set up our application, it is used by teachers in classrooms. So they either have tablets in the hands of students, or they have a big LED TV or a projector, and they would run the app. They would play a video either from our math library, science library, English or Urdu, and they could facilitate the video. They could pause it in the middle and explain something, ask questions, interact with students, and at the end of the video, they could take a formative assessment. So it's a very blended experience, and it's an experience that sort of requires a facilitator. It's not a completely hands-off experience. Now, what happened with this coronavirus? We made the app available for free, and now what we're having to do, we're learning a lot from our users who are downloading the app, and these are parents. And sometimes these are just students who are downloading the app and they're looking through the content. But for a kindergarten to grade 5 level student, the content still and the experience overall is not at a level where you could say this is completely personalized. You just hand over the device and the students would walk out learning everything that there is to learn. So that challenge, where the experience was designed for a different audience and now it is being used by a different audience in a different use case in a different context, that requires fundamental changes that obviously we don't have the time to do. So what we are beginning to do is just do some changes in the layout, make it available in different ways, so students have quicker access to different deeply seated laid out content. And another thing that we're trying to do is reaching to our active user base regularly through in-app notification, through emails, and also just highlighting some messaging on our social media to bring to parents' attention what all there is on the app. Just the whole idea of having to pivot, and that's the nature of the beast when you are in entrepreneurship, when you're starting something. So you've got to be able to be quick on your feet and pivot when there is a need. But this time the pivot is happening in a remote office environment where obviously we haven't had a lot of face time with our colleagues. It's been a little over 3.5 weeks. I think next Monday will be 4 weeks since we've been work from home. So those are some of the challenges. But then there is another challenge, and then that's going to tie into the question that Sana asked on our chat: is what are some of the ways to take that content? And I'm going to sort of talk about the national aspect of it. Most of you are practitioners and you're working within your community, within a school, within a confined audience of hundreds of or thousands of students. So the way we have engaged over the last 3 to 4 weeks is at a very national and provincial level, and sometimes just small little tweaks could require big fundamental changes. So one example that I'd like to share is that as a community, all of the education technology players in Pakistan, they had formed an association called ILM Association, and I'm one of the founding directors and president of ILM Association. So some of our members, we came together and we said we need a national response. So several of our members made many of their paid services and solutions free for the duration of coronavirus. And I think that spirit is something we don't usually see. We hear about all the time in the news that, oh, there was shortage of wheat, or there was shortage of sugar and the prices went up. you know so right now, whenever there is demand, there is increased demand, prices tend to go up, and that's the basic rule of economics. And most of our sort of competitors in the edtech space, their demand just went up. So by that token, we should have increased our prices, but we reduced and completely made our solutions free because we felt Yet at this time, this is literally a pivotal moment for our industry, because we believe that the teachers and principals and a lot of naysayers would see the hidden benefits in technology that the world has been discovering for 15 years. But for some reason in Pakistan, we as a collective unit haven't been able to sort of shift that mindset. So already technology has a lot to offer, but it cannot replace a good teacher in a classroom. And that sort of answers Sana's third question, like, can technology ever replace a teacher? I don't think technology can ever replace a human being. The moment it can replace a teacher, I think will be the moment when AI and machines and robots will be able to replace all human beings in all aspects, because a good teacher is a creative force that you cannot replace unless there is an equivalent or a better creative force that you can design and create with machine learning and robots. I think that time is still ways ahead, unless you believe in what Elon Musk is saying. And lastly, I would just say that as a collective unit, we also have seen something very, very positive from the government side. We've been, at least me as a little entrepreneur, have been knocking on the doors of education departments and the secretaries and all of the other officials, and then helping them understand, hey, listen, trust me, don't worry about the money or the cost. There is a way to bring technology and innovation into government school. You spend billions of rupees, and billions, or if not, hundreds of billions go unspent every year from the education budget that is allocated for non-salary verticals. It just goes unspent because they don't know how to spend other than buying buildings or furniture or resources. So and then suddenly in the COVID situation, we have not only been approached, but we have seen a lot of positive engagement. And I think that could be like sort of an entry point for our company and some of our fellow competitors to help 60% of Pakistan's K to 12 space. 60% of the students are somehow in that public school ecosystem. And that shift is happening. Federal government is saying, okay, PTV, they're buying 12 hours of transmission on PTV starting from the 10th. And they're saying we will not stop when the COVID-19 stops. We will continue to run 4, 5, 6 hours of education time on TV, PTV, or create our own channel. So that kind of shift has suddenly come in. And you know that this government has been talking about it for 2 years. But, there was so much inertia to look into this. And this is there is an opportunity for people like myself, my colleagues, and people who are working in this space.
Sorry, I think my video paused for a while. Hassan, thank you so much for sharing. And आपने जो बात की positive engagement की, it's so true. And we're in this time where again, like somebody said, inaction is not an option. Similarly, we cannot run away from technology now. It's there. We have to embrace it. And the question is, how do we embrace it, and how do we embrace it in a way where we maximize our potential as human beings, and we maximize the use of technology. Laraib, I know that you people work with the IB system, and there's a lot of hands-on learning over there. And I'm wondering, if you could talk about that, and you could talk about, your challenges in when you convert it from the classroom to the digital space, how the hands-on learning has been impacted, and what you're doing about that.
Yes, the IB is all about hands-on learning. It's all about out-of-the-box learning. It's where you step out of your comfort zone. You let go of the books, notebooks, traditional softboard पे लिख रहा है teacher, or whiteboard पे लिख रहा है teacher, or softboard पे आपके flash cards लगे हुए हैं, and all that traditional system. It's completely stepping out of it. So I think in these circumstances, we did really see the IB emerging as, the answer to so many problems that we face, if we faced in the post-COVID world. As far as the content creation is concerned, yes, we do have to now slightly deviate from the way we were creating content before this. We know that we cannot physically interact with the students. We cannot take students outside. For example, agar hum biology पढ़ रहे हैं, or we have to go and really collect samples, plants, leaves, and all sorts of, go and see how a fish pond is like, and usme se samples lena, and hydroponics and all of those things. Yes, we cannot do that anymore because we really cannot interact with each other, and we cannot step out of our house, but we can do so much, even within the boundaries that we currently have. So I'll tell you an example. One of our student groups from grade 8, they were doing a community project, which was completely different before all of this began. But they shifted their course of action, and now those kids are making sanitizers at home from the ingredients and from the equipment and from material available at home. So this is just one example. Like, I see eighth graders, they're making sanitizers, they're packing them in bottles, and they're ready to give it out also once they are actually allowed to step out of their houses and go out there. And I think Rabia was also talking about this, that you have to teach in a way that the students find more engaging in the current situation, because yes, you do have to understand that they are exposed to a lot of news, negativity coming through either social media or TV, and they know that people are dying all over the world. There is a lot of negativity around them, and but hope is the answer. So you have to instill hope in them by teaching them the content, by teaching them in a way that is hands-on, and that is something that they can find, they can relate to. So for example, in economics, you're learning about how the market is going up and down. In biology, you're researching about all of this. In computer science, I see my students making apps on what to do in an emergency situation. So they're making small prototypes. वो घर बैठ के बना सकते हैं, but they find it more engaging because they can relate to it more. It's helping them fight the negativity that is around them, and it is helping them move ahead with the content that we have to teach them. But I feel like in middle years, in primary years, you get that room much more than you do in the senior years, because you do have an external board that जिसका एग्जाम देना है. एग्जाम अगर नहीं भी हो रहा तो आपको वो करिकुलम पढ़ना ही है. You have to be in that group all the time. So that is a completely different ball game. Now that is up to the teacher how to make sure that the student stays on track while preparing for an external examination that is not happening now but is going to happen sooner or later. But on the other hand, making it more engaging, making it more interesting, making it more relatable. So that is one of the challenges that we as a community of teachers are facing. Then if I look at it from a school admin perspective, we have to, one of the major challenges is to make sure that the teachers are also up to date with their when it comes to using softwares. So for example, again, I'll give you a live example. We have a teacher who's 70 plus years old, and has is very firm in his ways, because he's taught for he's taught for decades, and he's taught in a specific way, and he really like understands his subject. He really understands the way he teaches, and he's very firm in his ways. But now I see him using Google Calendar, using Google Meets, using Google Classroom. Like he calls me up and says, now how do I add students? How do I add their guardians? How do I hold this video meeting? How do and it's so refreshing because you see people are stepping out of their comfort zones. People are ready to, put their skills to a test, ready to learn new things. I have seen a lot of growth in my students, in my faculty as well, because now that everybody has to do things a certain way, they are really trying to up their game. They're trying to make sure that the students are more involved in their lessons. They are delivering the content, but they're also keeping it interactive. And as for your question about what tools to use, because there are certain apps and softwares that you can log into and then disappear, and then there is really no way of checking whether you were online for that period of time. So that also again comes to the way a teacher decides to take his or her course of action forward. So uh, I have seen my teachers do it in multiple ways. So some of the teachers, they put content up, and then so depending on what they're teaching, they like make it a learn at your own pace kind of a thing. So there is that, but then there's also interactive lessons involved. अब दूसरा हमारी सीनियर क्लासेस में और ओ लेवल्स में ए लेवल्स में मसला ये है that you have to keep testing kids, because sooner or later there is going to be an exam, and you have to make sure that your students do not forget the content that you've been trying to teach them for 2 years or more than 2 years. So then you have to test them, you have to quiz them. Now you know that they're sitting at home, you can't physically go and check. How do you make sure that the testing that you're doing is actually 100% the results are 100% authentic? Then there are multiple ways that I see teachers trying to fight this issue, and that is, for example, one of our teachers put up a Google form which had an MCQ test, and it was a time test. So for example, 10 minutes, do this quiz and submit the answer. So they had a Google Meets where they discussed a topic, and then at the end of it, 10 minutes mein, they had a Google form which was made available to them there and then, and after 10 minutes it was taken down. So it had an MCQ test on it. So that is one way of testing. But then that is one way of traditional testing. How do you test when you know that you really cannot test in a controlled setting? So then you have to figure out ways for that as well. How do you test when you're not actually testing? So you have to give them research projects. You have to give them stuff that is out of the box, that is not there in the book, where you know that the student has to step out of their comfort zone, go research themselves, find out the answer, and solve that problem. So that has to be hands-on, that has to be interactive. The teacher has to be available all the time for help, and it also has to, at the end of the day, meet the learning outcome, because we don't know how long is this going to last. Is this going to last for another 2 months? Is it going to last for another year? We don't know when is this coming to an end. We don't know when will we be able to return to school, and there'll be a day when we'll be finally able to put this behind us. So there is that complete cluelessness about when are things coming back to normal. So keeping your learning, keeping your classroom setting normal, making sure that you're delivering the content but making it interesting enough, is a challenge. And also, one of the biggest challenges is that the thing that we were talking about in the beginning, that students think it's the summer break, because there has been news going around that from June onwards a new academic year is going to begin. So they know that यही 1.5 month है, probably ये तो हमारी summer break है, तो जून में तो हमने वापस आना है और उसमें तो new class होगी, तो हम अभी क्यों पढ़ रहे हैं? Or that this is a challenge. And then how Headstart has done it is that we have exactly our timetable in place. So nothing has changed. For example, if at 8:15 there's a Pakistan studies class that is going to end at 9:15, we make sure it is that way. So then there's a lunch break. So the lunch break is where it was when there was normal school. So from 8 to 3, we have to make sure that the timetable is followed the way it was being followed in regular school. So then this is a good thing, because you have to make sure that the student stays in practice. वो routine खराब ना हो उनकी, वो 12 बजे ना उठ रहे हो, वो सारी सारी रात ना जाग रहे हो, उनका जो स्क्रीन टाइम करिकुलम डेवलपमेंट करिकुलम डिलीवरिंग के लिए है, वो स्क्रीन टाइम तो है ही, लेकिन उसके अलावा what they're watching at night, and their routine is not disturbed. So that was one thing. But then we have to um, struggle, because the kids don't want to wake up in the morning. It's kind of like chutiyan hai, and then they don't, so attendance issues and all. That is also one of the challenges. But I see that getting better. We were struggling with it in the beginning, but now when they see that the classrooms are so interactive, the learning is going on, their friends are coming online, and they also find it as an escape from all the negativity that is around them. The one thing I would like to share, which happened a few days ago, we were in a live meet session, and there was another class going on. I had my mic mute, but then I could hear my students, and I heard them after a long time. So I couldn't help resisting. I turned my mic on, and I said, I cannot even tell you guys how refreshing it is for me to hear your voices again, and to know that you're actually fine and you're doing well, and you're coping up with all this negativity. And I could see the same reaction from them, and they were like, that is exactly what we were feeling right now, that hearing from our teachers, hearing familiar voices, and talking to our friends, and interacting with our teachers, learning, everything is normal. So that was a plus point, after all those challenges कि सुबह नहीं उठना, छुट्टियां हैं, हम क्यों पढ़ रहे हैं, फलाना स्कूल तो नहीं पढ़ रहा, उनको तो छुट्टियां हो गई हैं, and all of those things. But then there are positive things also which become a highlight of your day. Those are the things
Absolutely.
which are keeping the teachers going, which are keeping the parents and the students going as well.
Thank you so much, Laraib, for sharing with us so comprehensively both your challenges as well as your success stories. Because ये जो success stories होती हैं हमें, they give us hope. And like you said, we don't know what the next few months or even the next year is going to be like. So it's important for us to keep ourselves motivated. I also, like, when you were sharing the story of your students, I was realizing, this thing I read somewhere, that basically, like, it's about physical distancing and not social distancing. And the fact that it's so important for us to keep in touch with each other, and whether it's our teens or our students or parents, communities, it's important for all of us. जब आप बात कर रहे थे, आपने काफ़ी सी चीज़ों की बात की, and one thing that stood out for me was structure. And I think structure is so important for students, especially when they're at home. And usi ke liye, for example, as an organization, when we're looking into it, that we have a huge, we're like catering to more than around 3,500 students, with government teachers, with different teachers. How do we implement that structure? So the first step for us was to digitize the content and curate content, and make sure that we have everything digital and online, so that if need be, we can move towards that system. But we also realized that that is not enough. Just having a video up there is not going to solve this problem. So I would like to ask those of you who worked on developing your own content, how do you make the content engaging? And this is also one of the questions that we have from the people who are watching our discussion, that they're asking that kya zaruri hai? Is it important that your content is in the form of a video? And what are some of the ways that we can make the content engaging for our students and reach out to our students? Hassan, maybe you could talk about it, because you work so much on the digital content.
Okay, so First thing that I'd like everybody to realize is that it is extremely, extremely difficult and a tedious process to create visual content. Yes, you can put together a nice document, you can make a nice presentation, but if you want something that captivates your audience, then has to have basically a complete sort of package that you would see in any video. So you can take notes from movies, shows, the best thing you watch on YouTube. How do they drive engagement? Has to have a certain pacing, has to have an element of story, has to have visuals that go well with the narrative, has to have a well scripted sort of flow. So all those things I think would make a nicely created, professionally designed content. But I think for teachers, uh, I would strongly recommend for them to use tools that are already available, which allow them to share links and maybe edit videos that they could get from YouTube, or maybe suggest to students, watch this video from this point onwards and then stop watching at that point. There's plenty of good and excellent content available, especially if your students don't have a language barrier. They can watch videos in Urdu as well as in English. Then I think it's wonderful content you can find on YouTube. Plenty of it would relate to any curriculum, and math and science concepts are mostly universal, so it's easier to share those resources. And if you really, really want to create your own content, if you are, let's say, you're a passionate creator and you want to create content for your students which you think you can't find anywhere else. Why? Because maybe you have a certain context and you want to connect with your students in a personal way. Then sometimes just holding up your phone and just talking into the camera could also work, if you have a wonderful way of telling your story, and if you can build a narrative, and if you can explain to students whatever you're trying to explain in a nice way. So there are really low cost resources available. You can have a little tripod you can buy for 1,000 rupees, have a little camera stand, a little whiteboard, live video cast on Facebook or YouTube. So in terms of what's available to all of us, I think this COVID-19 has really given us this realization that technology has been outpacing human adoption for years. We're literally easily 15, 20 years behind all the tools that are out there. How to use those tools, that kind of knowledge, practice, and experience is what we don't have. And there's just so much to learn. So it's almost impossible for anybody to become really, really good at anything. And I would also just relate to what the medical practitioners are experiencing. Everybody's talking about ventilators. That's a piece of technology, right? And then suddenly, when so many ventilators became available, the second thing people started thinking about is who's going to use them. It's such a sophisticated equipment. You need hours and hours of training. So the human element we tend to forget. That when you bring in the human, you don't always need the best technology. Just pick the right tool, the technology that whoever the user is, that they're comfortable with. And if Google Classroom works for you, wonderful. But for many schools, for many teachers, especially mid-income and low-income schools, Google Classroom is going to be extremely complicated. So that's not the solution for them. So maybe WhatsApp is their solution. And somebody mentioned in a question, what are some really low-cost strategies to reach out to your audience? I heard some amazing stories of announcements from the mosque, and those kinds of things really resonate with the communities. So in one of the meetings that I attended, there was an idea that somebody floated about using the newspaper delivery boys to deliver SD card that have a lot of content that could go to remote communities. So even out of the box ideas like these could work for a community that's really, really remotely located. TV is there. There is some idea of exploring radio, but sadly radio is just not being used as frequently. And then there was an idea about, hey, listen, before the elections we all received Imran Khan's phone call on our mobile number. My name is Imran Khan, and then he went about his mandate, and then whatever the political speech that there was. But if you could bring on board these telcos, and they could deliver a 4, 5, 6 minute audio lesson, and that is something that could also scale to millions. So delivery ideas have to be explored. What works for our context, that has to be explored, because somebody said in our panel that and that a lot of epidemiologists also believe that we'll have to live with this coronavirus, this novel coronavirus, and it will just become part of our lives. We'll remain socially distant for some time, then we'll be used to it. We'll use technologies in new and novel ways. So maybe we have to explore the whole 9 yards of technology and find the one that suits our needs, because there's plenty of like a long list of tools that's available, and not there's no one size fits all.
Thank you so much, Hassan. And I liked what you talked about, the fact that one solution doesn't fit everyone. And some of the questions that we've been getting on the group are this, like, somebody asked us that what are some of the low tech ways to reach out to communities? Because if 60% of our students are going to government schools, access to internet, smartphones, laptops, etc., is not a luxury that many of them have. Somebody here wrote something very valid, that they said that, they're wondering if this gap, like, this pandemic is going to widen the learning gap between the privileged and the unprivileged. And maybe we could spend this time, we have, like, I think about 15 minutes left, uh, talk about, like, 5 minutes to talk about some of the things that we think that we've been doing, or we think that can work to ensure that this gap doesn't widen, and to make sure that we're able to reach out to students and the creative ways through which we can reach out to our students and communities. If any of you would like to share some of these ideas.
Yeah, Anam, if I may.
Yes,
So this
please.
is a very important and a very interesting question, and a very real dynamic that sort of we are facing at this point in time. And I feel like we the one way to look at it is to sort of take a step back and to see, because we are generally in this even the pre-corona world or the existing corona world. I think we're some of our patterns or our attitudes are being called upon to be shifted a little, because we're always in this mode of comparing, and in this mode of seeing oh, okay, how is someone who's going to mainstream school doing as compared to someone who's in a government school, or in a less privileged sort of community or less privileged school. And there's constantly this comparison and this race in a way to sort of see where that takes us. And I feel like right now is a brilliant opportunity for us to sort of pause and sort of think about, is that really what we are aiming for? Because yeah, as much as like it's also like something that's calling on us to be practical and to really rationalize and think that, okay, within the given situation, within the circumstances that we have currently, uh, what is sort of the best foot forward that we can have. And like I said earlier as well, when we were before this question came out, we were talking about the tools and the platforms to use and what are available to what communities and all of that. I feel like that is still, for me, is it maybe a secondary question, and a primary question for me at this point would be, what is the content? What are we wanting to teach? What are we wanting the students or the communities to learn from this? And that would really drive the platforms and the sort of delivery channels we use. And I feel like, as Hassan also suggested, like there's brilliant ways to sort of innovate and create delivery patterns. I feel once we sort of understand what is the content that we want to give out, and and what and that will really drive from the sort of need assessment that we do from the communities that we're serving. So the needs of someone from a privileged background would be different. I imagine them to be slightly different than what they would be for someone who is from a not so privileged background, or from a house of, let's say, a child staying in a house of 15 people living in one room, as compared to a child who has his own room and has all the technology available. At the same time, both reaching out and taking an action for both communities is important. And I feel like each one of them has their demands and a, a different and a very sort of tailored approach. And at this time, if we sort of get on the bandwagon of sort of comparing and trying to find, okay, are we doing enough that this will help the child give the same exam or get the same results as someone who is from a mainstream school, I feel like that might be limiting at this point to really consider, because we're right now dealing with questions and with challenges that are bigger than that. And it's really sort of what the lessons that we give at this time really would shape how the children and the families also that we're serving really sort of understand and realize the kind of approach that is needed to sort of build this forward and really come out stronger. So I feel like that was just my 2 cents on that question. It's very real, but I feel like we sort of need to also understand the dynamics that are at play here.
I'd like to talk about this as well. So when we started deciding about हमने इस pandemic के अब what are we going to do and all of that. So it is very real that our children are at the children that I teach are at a disadvantage because they haven't received the same sort of privilege. They don't have the same sort of resources right now. There are a lot more constraints for them. And it is also very real that the consequences of this pandemic and everything that's happening right now are going to be much harsher for them. They are at a risk of dropping out of school. They're at a risk of falling behind. The education gap is already so big and it's going to get bigger. So with all of that in mind, before we sat down and thought of, what are we going to do right now, we decided to forget the constraints and think about what we would want for these kids, because I believe they deserve everything that their privileged counterparts do. So considering that, so we put all the constraints aside and we thought of, okay, हम इन बच्चों के लिए क्या चाहते हैं. And if I personally talk about it, I would want the same thing for my students that I want for my brother. But honestly, I would want more for my students because my students are already lying. So there is so much more that these kids need. And I think it's very important to first realize that. And with that, it's important to realize that, now there's all these constraints, but we also need to step up and make more of an effort. So constraints, hain, yes, but the kids are also at such a huge risk that we have to step up. And so that's the sort of faith that we've been operating with. And so we decided to, we decided everything we could do, ye constraints and how do we work around them. We came up with a plan A and a plan B and a plan C, and we keep evolving as we go along. So what how we feel about this as an organization is that it's an iterative process. It's going to keep happening. We can't wait for a perfect solution to come by and start then. So sort of how we feel about this gap is that yes, it's very real and it's something that we struggle with. It's something that we've always struggled with since we started this work. So now it's just the challenge is the same. It's just that we have to go about it a different way. So that's sort of the mindset that we're operating with, and we're trying to do everything that we can to, minimize the effect that's going to have, that this gap is, sure, maybe there will be a higher gap after this, but we can, make it better. We can stop it from being worse. So, and that's the least that we can do. What we can do during this time, so for example, what I would want to share is that during this time, the conversations that I've had with my students, I've had one-on-ones with them, the kind of data that I've collected about them, it's so much better, it's so much more detailed, it's so much more connected than the data that I had before. So this pandemic, it's also an opportunity. It's an opportunity to connect with my students, to find out more about them, to show them that I can be resilient, and if I can be resilient, they can also be resilient. And that, to make them so what we thought about is कि जब हमारे बच्चे इसके बाद कहाँ पर होंगे, what's the new skills that they should have developed and what should have happened. So when I go back to my classroom, once all of this is over, I'm going to have a wall dedicated to, how did we survive this time? What did we do? We did not give up. We had, so we're having activities where we take pictures and we connect them to students. And then when we go back to that class, we're going to have this, you're going to have this wall, this time, this memory of how resilient we were during this time, how much more we learned and how much we grew during this time. So I feel like while the constraint is real, the gap is real, there's still a lot that we can do, and this is a unique opportunity as well. So that's sort of how I feel about all of this.
think Anand's videos or the connection is paused. So, somebody mentioned that this in the question feed, that how do we make sure that at this time these students who were already disadvantaged, they are not further
Thank
disadvantaged.
you so
And
much for sharing.
this remains a big challenge, because I think uh, already these schools didn't have enough resources, didn't have teachers who uh, were well trained, well equipped. These schools where these low income community students go to, they already didn't have the resources. And now, with them having to stay at home, that means they have even less access. So at this time, I guess TV could be one strong medium. We cannot deny the fact that 165 million mobile phone connections are in Pakistan. So, feature phones could be utilized to create an interactive experience at a very limited scale with students. And technology does have room to play. Using TV, interactive media on the phone, and maybe 78 million people have smartphones, and almost most of them know how to use WhatsApp. So, maybe creating a bot that talks to students using machine learning and artificial intelligence. The technology is available. That over the next few months, there could be solutions out that help these students not only catch up, but also race ahead. In some cases, because the good thing about technology is that I think it's a bigger equalizer than education. And sometimes, because education isn't delivered at the same quality and at the same level to all people, but the network connection, the 3G, 4G, it is given with some, obviously, with some discrimination. But even somebody who has 100 rupee connection, they can also enjoy a YouTube video. They can enjoy a good lesson that's available, that's out there. So I think there are low cost technology based solutions available, which some people, some innovators and entrepreneurs would explore and would come out, not only to help the privileged, but also those that have limited means. Uh, so that was my thought.
Thank you so much, Hassan, and thank you so much, everyone. It was a very enlightening talk. I would just like to sum up some of the themes that came up during our conversation. One thing which was common was that it's important to identify needs of our students, and after we do needs assessment, whether it doesn't matter where our children are coming from, or whether we're reaching out to a larger, audience on TV, or whether we're reaching out to students of a particular school. It's the needs that will tell us. Meanwhile, it's very important to stay in touch with our students for ourselves, to stop, pause, reflect, and then based on that, try something. And it's going to be a process of action and iteration rather than finding a perfect solution and then going with that. And we talk about action and iteration. It's again, we're looking at multiple ways over here. So we're looking at content that's already available. We're looking at using TV, using radio, but even using WhatsApp, maybe sending voice notes. I like the example of the Imran Khan wali call, Hassan, that you gave. So there are a lot of these different ways through which we can reach out to our students, and it's important for us to know which mediums our students are already using. Engaging with parents is something that came up as very important. Engaging with parents is something that came up which was very important, and having engaging content and having content, and again, finding different ways of learning. We also talked about something that came up in the questions was whether this technology will replace the teacher, and I think all of us agreed that the technology is not replacing the teacher, but the technology is definitely changing the role of the teacher in the learning process. And it's we're all happy to see that everyone is kind of evolving in the process, and there are lots of challenges, but all of us are getting there. Thank you once again. Our full discussion will be available on our Facebook page and your YouTube channels tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. This was brilliant. Thanks a lot.